So good afternoon and welcome to Saturday Sesh. My name is Trey Reckling. I'm the founder and director of Academy of Cannabis Science. And this is part of our chat series. If you're in class, you're required to attend at least one chat. If you're a consultant student, you're required to attend two. But otherwise, Saturday Sesh events are free and open to the public, so we encourage you to let people know about them. We have gone to once a month, so the first Saturday of every month, we'll be here at noon Pacific. So join us. It's always a fun, lively discussion, and we always learn stuff. And speaking of learning stuff, Jeff, it is nice to have you here today, man. How you doing?
I'm great. I'm really excited for this opportunity to share my experiences, and hopefully I can provide, great value to all you folks.
Great. And Jeff has a tremendous amount of experience, which I'll let him talk about a little bit. But Jeff is the co-founder, co-owner of MFUSED brand Cannabis, one of the largest cartridge and oil distributors, sellers in the state of Washington, with a commitment to clean cannabis, and has also recently started a new brand called Polite Brand, which is a low THC product, which is very, very interesting. We're gonna hit you up about that too. But tell us a little bit more about you, Jeff.
Yeah, so I'm a local guy and born and raised here in Seattle. I grew up here and started in the legacy market for the cannabis space. Really introduced to the plant at a very, very early age in my family, mostly directly because of sort of the war on drugs, as well as just sort of underrepresented communities. I found myself not touching the plant for a really long time until my mom actually needed, to kind of look at some alternative medicine. She's taking a bag full of medication. And I got really early access, I would say, into the medical marijuana scene around 2010, and developed, a business and a brand making some of the first pure marijuana cartridges that come into the market that were fully packaged, presented to the public in 2011. Fast forward, 10 years later, I'm still in the space, still passionate about it. And, to Trey's point, I co-founded a brand called MFUSED. We are the largest minority-owned company here in the state of Washington in the cannabis space. We're also the largest extraction company in terms of throughput, and and we do the most sales here in Washington as well. I've been really fortunate to have been exposed to both the cannabis hemp environment as well as the recreational environment. And so I feel like I have a really unique viewpoint of not only where things have gone, because it wasn't necessarily, sexy to be in the cannabis space 10 years ago. It really was 100% passion and relationship driven. And I've seen this convergence to, a more, standard industry. And so I'm trying to carry over some of those values and principles into this space.
Sounds great. And in full disclosure, I worked with Jeff, have an opportunity to work with him to create educational content for bud tenders, for staff, for the general public. And so want to put that out there. But Jeff, it's really interesting what you guys do. Let me back up though. You said you got an introduction to cannabis early on. What kind of messaging did you get about cannabis growing up as a kid?
Well, I mean, it's difficult, but I guess it'll be difficult for most of the audience to understand. But my father was really early in growing cannabis, so he actually stole a street lamp and built a cannabis grow in his basement before I was really born. And so he was really early on with the plant. And then tragically, my father was murdered over a drug transaction and money when I was 3 years old. And so my entire life, I grew up with cannabis and guns and all of this just being absolutely off limits because it destroyed my family. And so for me to sort of go from, tragedy to triumph, being in the position that I am now, it's really rewarding. But I had a lot of stigma placed on the plant at a very early age in my life, because that was the catalyst, one of the catalysts that, our family chose to kind of blame for the situation that we were in with when it comes to my father. So really early on, I heard a lot of bad stuff about it. All the same biases that most of you folks had, or not that you guys had, a lot of people have, are the same ones that I had. And it wasn't until I got re-exposed when my mom asked me to start looking into, alternative medicines for her, that I was really more accepting of the plant in general.
Well, thanks for sharing, man. I know you've shared that with me before, and thanks for sharing with us. And I know about your commitment to communities of color and the justice and equity. conversation that is intertwined in this, and we're gonna get to that for sure. And I failed to mention that Infused and Polite are minority and female-owned brand, which is very rare in the space as well. So congratulations.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Talk to us about the new brand a little bit. I think a lot of people are familiar with, know the Infused brand. Um, how is Polite different?
Well, Plight was really born with sort of this community outreach in mind. So I actually met a wonderful lady, which you may know, named Mary Brown, at a education speaking event where she was teaching, bud tenders and helping them get medically endorsed. And so I've always sort of been the owner that kind of creeps around behind the scenes, and because I'm younger, most people don't assume I don't present myself that way. I'm really approachable. I'm really open. And so I was just sat in on that meeting, and I listened to her speak for about an hour and a half, and I was like, holy shit, this is what I need. I need to have someone like this who I can take advantage of my skill of building products and activating brands, and work with her to legitimize the products that we're making, because we advocated for medical marijuana to become recreational, and then we just shut the door on all of recreation medical people. Right. And that happens time and time and time again, because the emphasis on recreational in the recreational environment becomes high THC, genetics, terps, and that to me falls more in line with the passion for the plant, and not always does that integrate with the whole purpose of the plant, right? The opportunity. And so our Polite series, I'm really excited to bring that into the market, is a phytotherapeutic product. So really, really high in emergent cannabinoids. So things like CBG, CBN, the acidics, and our understanding of it from an extraction standpoint, as well as our direct relationship with hemp cultivators, has given us this incredible access to emerging technology that we're able to then work directly with a wonderful person like Mary and our co-founders to develop these really unique formulations that are primarily low THC, but really high in other cannabinoids. What makes me excited about them is in the cannabis space specifically. And if you go back to my early, like my first entry to cannabis was, my mom was buying CBD waters, and they were like $8, and they were like 10 milligrams of water. And I was like, you need like 10 of these damn things. And so all of a sudden it became a budget scenario, an affordability scenario. And so it sort of exposed me to some of the injustice just in price. Mm-hmm. Product that we've developed, because of our access, we translated that value, and now we're creating everyday wellness products that are more full plant than the plant that we smoke in the cannabis industry, to be fair, right? They're rich with cannabinoids that, we don't normally see, because those plants in the recreational space have been, hybridized, genetically modified to grow really high THC and unique profiles, and disregard some of those emergent cannabinoids that we consider minors. And so we're changing the game on the Polite side. Those minor cannabinoids are actually major in ours, and you'll see equal parts CBG to CBD to CBN, and it's unrivaled. I haven't seen it anywhere.
And I haven't seen anybody doing that, and also adding the synergistic herbs. Could you speak about that?
Yeah, so I think it's really important. When you're a plant-based person and you really enjoy the plant, you also are going to look into alternatives, like Sarah was mentioning previously. And so there's a lot of value in Ayurvedic herbs. You see it with like big brands like doTERRA and some of that stuff, but we can integrate these things together. It's just knowing the right formulation and then making sure that they're not counteracting each other. And so by working with the wonderful folks again at the Ames Institute, Dr. Leanna Standish, Juliana Giles, these people are specialists in Ayurvedic. And so they're measuring the effectiveness of Ayurvedic herbs and then adding cannabinoids to it to get a more effective product. So it's like tailoring a product specifically to what you're looking for, instead of just kind of, my analogy has been, we can all have the same ingredients to a cake, but if you don't have a good recipe, then not everybody's going to come up with a cake. And a lot of times the products that we see in the market are not driven based on science or research. And so they're not as effective, which diminishes the potential value of the plant and what it can do for them.
So I imagine that was kind of a risk, because we know how much people are THC shoppers or THC hunters. Sure. And a lot of times we'll look at the card and say, hey, give me the highest THC. So to take an approach like Polite is taking somewhat of a gamble and hoping you can re-educate and still connect with people and help them understand the value of these other cannabinoids. Is it working so far? I know it's early, but are people getting it?
I tell you guys, I was first off, I think I think it's healthy to acknowledge that many folks are skeptical of cannabinoids that are not named THC. They're hopeful when it comes to CBD, and they may not even fully be aware of other cannabinoids. They just hear that word. Generally, there's hundreds of them, and you know, so I think for us, the beauty in licensing it to MFUSED in Washington is because we have large scale distribution, we're a reputable brand, we have a lot of activation, we have a lot of good existing relationships. We're able to sort of jump to the front of the line as an industry leader. And then as we propose a cutting edge product, get really good adoption. And so in fact, the adoption has been overwhelming. I mean, overwhelming. People that are extremely skeptical of CBD products, emerging cannabinoids, herbs, try them. And I'm talking connoisseurs, folks like David who have, you know, pressed their own rosin that are like, hey man, I know what's real. Like I'm spending that time to make something really good. They try it and they're blown away. And so I think that it's a scenario where people want to see this option. They just haven't been exposed to it, and the overall adoption has been tremendous. It's changing the entire CBD space in Washington really quickly. So it's kind of rocking the boat a little bit. When you do that, you certainly get, you know, a bit of like, whoa, I didn't really see that coming. But, you know, I think we're really playing our position, which is that CPG, consumer packaged goods, working with wonderful folks like Trey, Mary to educate and activate the brand, but really laser focused on sales education materials so that people understand why and what they're doing. And then when we formed the brand, we developed the packaging, we were really focused on inferring effects based on icons, colors, and wording so that, you know, we hear over and over and over, and I hate to, and I'm not going to diminish education at all, but not everybody actually wants to know all the information. They just want to know enough to be able to make an informed decision, and then they will pursue additional education once you've validated that product with something that works. And between the design, the messaging, the distribution, the cannabinoids, as well as the formulation, it's really a home run. And we're not getting any pushback from folks that, you know, are used to using high THC products or think THC is the primary catalyst. In fact, I was surprised with the acceptance from what I consider the industry folks that, you know, have been exposed to some of these cannabinoids, but they haven't been given enough of them in a purposeful serving or had them available in terms of how affordable they were. That's been a big challenge that we faced, is a lot of times these newer products are just over the moon in terms of price. And so folks can't actually try them, so they can't really support them. And I think our group really understands the activation of a brand happens at the counter with a staff and like a bud tender. And so we've always valued that. That's why I sit in on those meetings, because I want to hear what they're learning and what they're saying so that I can help be able to deliver some guidance to them.
So help us on that front. You know, we have a lot of people on the call today who work directly with patients, or people listen to their opinion, you know, when they have an opinion. And cannabis is not cheap. I don't care what brand you buy, especially if you're buying extracts. It's a purchase. It's an investment. So help us. If you were going into a cannabis shop, brands aside, what are some things? What are some good questions a consumer should be asking about their vape product to distinguish? Because there's so many brands, so many options, so many strains. So what are some questions you'd want to know as a consumer about a vape pen or a vape cartridge before you made a purchase?
I think for me, obviously being like really focused on this particular space, we're primarily a vape company on the MFUSED side, an extraction company. I'd want to know about the safety of the hardware, the reliability of, you know, the product in terms of their experience. I'd want to know what other like key factors they're looking for. Are they clean green certified? You know, are they full plant? Do they have artificial terpenes? Do they have cutting agents? And a lot of times just asking those questions will provoke potentially the staff to give you more information outside of just suggesting what they like, right? Because it's all about choosing the product that you're looking for to give you the effect you're searching for. So when I go into these scenarios, I ask, hey, you know, what are your favorite products? And then this is what I'm looking to accomplish with this product, or hey, this is what I really like. This is my suggestion. And so creating an open dialogue with the staff is really important. But I think it's kind of a chicken and an egg. The staff should be able to provide to you some safety measures and really emphasize, you know, what makes certain products different. But there's sort of a lack of there's not a linear line between value, price, and brand awareness. And so it's really difficult, honestly, to go through that question. So the main thing to me would be, you know, do they have heavy metal testing? Have you guys validated that they've, you know, passed or have no pesticides? Are they clean green certified, which in the cannabis space is, you know, quasi used as organic. It's not really, but it is. You know, I would be really laser focused on that. And then, you know, for me, budget and value, no matter my economic situation, how much it's shifted, is still the number one most important thing. And that's making sure that people are getting good value. And so also just like, hey, you know, is it worth buying something that's 2 or 3, you know, a third more versus not? And, you know, a lot of times, in fact, those products are not made by that company. They're bought and resold, and that's why they cost more.
Mm-hmm.
So as a customer, you're used to walking in and seeing something that costs more money, assuming it is somehow better quality, and same with the staff, but they're not aware that that could have been outsourced by a company, in our case, that is, you know, always targeted on value.
So you know, sometimes I've in the past I've gotten a vape, and you get down to the end, to the little bit of oil or no oil left, and you don't realize, and you get that really funky burning taste,
Mm.
or it's like I don't know if it's a burnt wick. Can you explain that to me? Is that a matter of because I honestly, is it bad hardware? Is it, hey, you just need to know it was time to quit hitting on that thing a couple hits ago, or what?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of mystique when it comes to the hardware, to be fair. There is oil that's generally absorbed into the wicking chamber right next to the heating element. So optically, even though the cartridge looks low or empty, there is oil there. The difference is the replenish rate on that oil to the wicking system and then to the atomizer is not the same. And so you can, you know, kind of scorch it, get that really funky taste. So what I actually suggest, Trey, is just, you know, use your product on a lower setting, enjoy the taste, the experience. It's not about cloud chasing. It's not vaping. Vaping has propylene glycol, PEG. That's actually encouraging creating clouds. That's a whole different experience. That's not the goal with cannabis. In fact, I think that's counterproductive in many cases because you're volatilizing, you know, terpenes at a higher temperature and you're not really sure if that is, you know, the best way to absorb them. So it's fairly common. I just really suggest if you take smaller draws, when you get to that point, it just may be time to say, hey, you know what, it's done. I relate it to like the very end of a bag of chips. Some of us, me, I'm gonna dump it in my mouth with the crumbs. Some of us say, hey, the crumbs, I'm throwing it away. It's
Right.
kind of like it's personal preference, but that's the best relatable that I can do.
Okay, thanks. And you know, I've got plenty more questions for you, but I want to open the floor. We're at the bottom of the hour, and we usually turn to our crew that's on the call and see who might have a question for you at this point.
What's your preferred extraction method?
Oh man, so that's a that's an interesting question. I would say, generally speaking, hydrocarbon. I do like. I think of extraction more so. I think differently than most. To me, extraction is just the ability to get the first step of a product. It's the post processing of extractions that make products unique. So just because of the low temperature, low pressure, I really like hydrocarbon. However, of course, I'm not a fan of hydrocarbons. But that would probably be my favorite. And it's really just because the products that come out of a hydrocarbon machine have the most flexibility for you to create these other subset of products. It's not, I don't look at extraction as a vertical where it's one process all the way through, right? We're a formulation company, and so we intermix different extraction methods based on a very specific goal, right? You have isolates, you have hydrocarbons, you have ethanol extraction, you have distillation, you have winterization. All of that post-processing is actually what we do to formulate and create really unique products. So hydrocarbon is a good, start, and that's the one I like the most, but it's not necessarily the winner for me.
Hi, I have a question. So this is for you, but also kind of for everybody. I'm still learning about just vaping and all that stuff with cannabis. So everything you're saying is just kind of like going over my head. I was wondering if you can like give me any good resources, websites, YouTube channels, anything that would help me understand.
I think I'm actually going to give that to Trey. I feel like that's right up Trey's alley.
Yeah, Chels, basically an extraction, whether you're doing a CO2 extraction or a bubble hash extraction like David is loves to do, you're separating the trichomes from the plants. So you want to separate the vegetative material from the trichomes, the little golf ball on the tee looking thing, which is where the magic happens, which is where the active cannabinoids are. And so it's how do you separate those from the plant in a way that you get as little of the green, the chlorophyll, and all that stuff, the waxes, the lipids that you don't necessarily care for in that process. And so cold is one of the things that makes that trichome really fragile. So that's why a lot of people will use high pressure CO2 and at a subcritical temperature. So it's really, really cold. And even people making bubble hash will put their buds or their flower in the freezer before they do the process, and then the process itself has ice water. So that's the first process, and then from there you can go a lot of different ways. Some people in the market for a while really valued the clear. They thought the more clear an extract was, the better it was. But then as people learn, they're like, well, yeah, it was really clear, but did it have any flavor? What was stripped out of it that could have been beneficial? All those questions come up. So, and it also comes down to taste. I like bubble hash myself a great deal, but it's a much smaller market in the commercial market. It's one of the oldest types of extracts, or of way to extract those compounds, but it's one of my favorite. So other people, David, you want to chime in on that?
Yes. From what Trey's saying, exactly that. There's different extractions for different reasons. Extraction is just a concentration, so it's just a more powerful effect of the plant. And then what was Jeff? He is making very specific formulations, like he said, for his company and his products. And where I'm on the spectrum, I'll do the full solventless rosin, because I'm basically going for the purest essence and expression of the plant for the most medicinal value. So that's why it's not a really big commercial market. The solventless rosin is what you'll see in Washington State going for like $80 a gram to keep it in the fridge. In California, it can get up to like 125, some of the Pop and Barkley stuff. So it can be a little bit prohibitive, of course, which is why you try and find people that are other patients and medical activists that know the process. And I guess I'll just finish this train of thought by saying that it's really important, like Jeff was saying, to get some of these other cannabinoids out there. They have a lot of really good therapeutic effects. One of the reasons why we're destined to doing some lab work, so I can do some CBG, CBN, CBD, THCV, talk about a great cannabinoid for during the day. It's a bit of an appetite suppressant, and it gives you energy. Future diet drug of America, THCV. But that's, my 2 cents on this Saturday. Thank you.
And Chels, it's important to keep in mind anything that's in the original source material. Once you extract it, you run the risk of making that more concentrated too. So if you had any pesticide in your original product, once you concentrate it, you can end up with a highly concentrated pesticide relatively in that product. So if you're learning how to make hash, bubble hash or otherwise, or just a rosin press, make sure you know as much as you can about the source material, particularly if you can use it for medical purposes or offer it to other medical patients.
Yeah, Chelsea, I was, I think that I heard also in your question was, where are the resources to learn about vaping specifically? And so I think Leafly is a really good source. One of the biggest challenges, and so obviously I think the Academy of Cannabis Science is one as well. One of the biggest challenges in researching information is we are producing the information ourselves because we're not in a federally legalized scenario. And so there tends to be a lot of bias in information and publications that you see online because they have to have worked with somebody who is searching to accomplish something. So really it's just kind of collecting that information openly, looking, being laser focused on like temperatures, things like volatility, vapor density, toxicology, just anything that you would really be focused on in the, I hate to say it, in the nicotine space, right? It's very similar when you're looking at vaping and smoking a flower. I think that's why it's really important to have groups and sessions just like this, where we understand our passion and we allow that to really be present in products and not just commercialized, and not understand that there are negatives to commercializing if you're not aware of certain things.
And it did take a vape scare a couple years ago with vitamin E acetate to freak people out and have them start asking questions about, hey, what's in this vape material? Because Jeff mentioned tobacco, and when you see that big huff and puff of smoke, that is PG, propylene glycol, which is the same thing they use in fog machines in theater, right? So you're just making yourself, in the case of that stuff, that tobacco vape, you're just like a walking fog machine. But some people really like that. None for me, but yeah. So luckily, education matters, because then the consumers start asking questions, and it's less likely that they get duped, or at least buy something unknowingly that might not be as beneficial as something else.
And also, may I just add, I know I don't really consume too much in the retail market because they don't really have the products of what I'm looking for. But I do know what I tell people in any recreational state is to find the brands, like Jeff mentioned, are Clean Green certified, those that are going to be growing without pesticides or processing, with really good clean practices. Even here in Washington State, we have some that are Department of Health certified. So we got Trailblazing and then what's I can't remember her brand.
Washington Bud Company.
Thank you, Washington Bud Co. A Lazy Bee Garden. So it's all about finding those people in your state that is going to have the real clean product, and then you can purchase that knowing, okay, whether I get a vape cartridge or flower or something on their topical line, I know it's going to be a good, safe product.
Jeff, what's another medically endorsed brand that you know of?
Another medically endorsed brand.
Well, I was plugging you for Polite because I believe you guys had a decision to make and decided to. Now I know the vape product cannot be medically endorsed, or Department of Health won't count that, but isn't it true that all your other formats are medically endorsed for medical community?
So you have a 502 compliant sticker on your commercial 502 product?
We only sell through the 502.
Right. Are you displaying the Washington 502, the medical compliant product logo?
We are on the products that do qualify. So
that's great.
It's kind of a chicken and egg thing. We adhere to all of the compliance, but there are certain limitations in terms of range of potency and number of servings that can impact your ability to present a product as medically compliant. It's interesting.
I congratulate you for taking the expense and the trouble of going to all that additional testing and risk to take care of the patients and provide that product. Cannabis Alliance is fighting for an excise tax reduction for compliant product, or excise tax waiving for compliant products. So I hope that comes back to benefit you, man.
I appreciate it. I think in full disclosure, I think that there's two things. Number one, more groups should be pursuant of that, both from a community standpoint and a safety standpoint. But number two is we need to be able to make sure that the groups that are offering that are following and adhering to the rules. There's a lot of things that we advocate for, and then we don't follow through to make sure that people are adhering to them. So to support you on that, it's very important. We are going to continue to pursue it. We're going to continue to pursue it no matter what. It's just because ethically and, for ourselves, that's where we want to adhere to a different standard. But there's currently no value of that for a customer. And so it really is just us burdening ourselves with creating higher barriers, higher thresholds for us to be comfortable with.
And Caitlin, thank you for putting the brands in there. Fairwinds, Trailblazing, and Be Polite right now. 3 in the entire state of Washington. And in Nevada, we encourage you to be asking the same questions. Nobody can call themselves organic. They might say organically grown, but organic is a federal distinguishment. The group that determines what's organic in the state of Washington through the Department of Ag is working with the cannabis community and will put a I think it's clean grown sticker on in time. They've been working for years, but they're trying to be prepared for the day, and it may be soon, that the feds decriminalize across the board and allow us to speak more freely and actually qualify for that sort of thing. Jeff, if I could change gears just a little bit, we talked about you being you co-owning one of the only minority and women-owned brands in the state. And we know that, the damage that has been done to not just your family, but so many families in the drug war. What advice would you have for a little Jeff Freeman or somebody, another person of color who was entering this industry, who's young, kind of didn't know where to start? Any advice to help them along the way or encourage them in a certain direction?
My biggest piece of advice is race your own race. Find the right partners, people that you can trust, that are going to go to bat and stick to their guns, that have great values. And then furthermore, be really creative with, what you're doing, right? I think as a person of color, as a Black and Italian man, it's important that people, from my childhood, my personal experience requires that I'm creative. I didn't really have a traditional path when it comes to business. Business was a conduit for me to express my artistic ability, my creativity, my hustle, my motivation. And, as with women, people of color, I think it's really important that you align yourself and commit to supporting that cause, both that and underrepresented people. I think that's extremely important. There's strength in numbers. And I think that you have to use the strength in numbers approach versus, trying to be and race to the top as fast as possible. So I just really believe that being really skilled in what you do, being really proficient, and also continuously self-evaluating, if you can take that approach into a partnership or into a product or a license or education, that's really the starting point for me. And then now looking at different, legislative agendas or scenarios that they're promoting social equity, right? Being really exposing yourself to that, getting involved in those circles similar to this, where you're meeting other people who are interested in the same things that you are and have relative experiences or relative goals similar to yours, and seeing, again, if you can work with others to, use numbers to your advantage versus economics, which in many instances, people that are under serviced, especially people of color, don't really have access to.
And Jeff knows, Jeff is committed to working with us and with Last Prisoner Project. Both the Academy of Cannabis Science and the Cannabis Alliance have been in conversations with the Last Prisoner Project. If you're not familiar with them, I'm going to post up their link here in a second. But LPP has a commitment said, our mission is not done until the last cannabis prisoner is released. And so we hope you're on the same page with us, whether you subscribe or support LPP or some other. We just cannot forget the fact that people are making money. People are making, a living in this space while people remain in jail. And that's no fault of the people who are making money, but we cannot forget the other people. And we also know arrests continue to be unequal. In some communities, people of color continue to get arrested at 8 times the number of white men or white people. So there's a lot of work to be done. So don't think that legalization in your areas is the end of the fight. It's not. And we've also seen that people in the first in line to get licenses have been predominantly white. And so this is this is in men. And so this is one chance when everybody should have an equal, everybody should start at the same starting line, and it's not happening. But we got other states still coming on. We have other licenses still coming out. So do what you can do in your own way. And we look forward to, we're going to have some educational panels with LPP to help some people who have gotten out of jail and help prepare them for jobs. And so we appreciate, Jeff, your commitment to being part of that. And as we kind of put legs on it and figure out when and where it's going to be, we'll let you all know more so that you can contribute in any way that you might like to do that. Any other questions from the floor? Sorry for my diatribe there, but.
I want to put in a plug for the Alliance. So anybody who's on this call, whatever state you're in, if you're trying to be in industry, or mostly if you're trying to be in industry, but for general education, check out the Cannabis Alliance, become a member, support the Alliance. And just by participating and getting in the emails and the virtual meetings, you'll be networking with people who started Washington's commercial industry when it started in 2012, 2013 in those rooms, and patients along the way and such. So check out the Cannabis Alliance and get into the community.
And thanks for that. And Caitlin did post the link. Like we said, happy hours 4 to 5 on Tuesday are a great opportunity. You don't have to know anybody. Networking sounds boring and like work, and it's not with this crew. I think you'll see that they have an interest in you and what you're doing and what you're interested in. And shoot, I moved here 6 years ago, and we didn't know anybody. We knew 2 people in town, but I began building my Canna fam, going to professional organization meetings and just sitting there and feeling like I don't understand anything y'all are talking about yet, but I'm gonna take some notes and I'm gonna look up this stuff and I'm gonna learn. And I'll bet you I see heads nodding. That's the way a lot of people learn. You know, a lot of times education is a secondary thought for regulators. You know, regulators are worried first about, hey, are the kids going to get into it and who's going to be sending this across state lines, but they're not asking important questions about education to keep everybody safe. So you might find that you know, you feel like you're the only one interested in something, and it's just not the case. A lot of good, smart, self-educated people out here working the space and making this happen. So don't feel, Chels, thanks for admitting when something went over your head earlier, but that's the way we learn, you know. Don't be shy about raising your hand in a group of people and saying, hey, I don't know what y'all are talking about. So other questions for Jeff?
Yeah.
Sarah.
Sorry if you answered this before, but for Infused and for Be Polite, do you guys go from one garden or do you have multiple grows that you're sourcing from?
So we do. So we're not able to establish contracts. So Trey said this earlier, there's no vertical integration in Washington.
Right.
You can't have like retail cultivation and processing. And for us, we felt that, you know, we could really cut our teeth just in the processing and let the cultivators grow, the retailers run a retail. And so we source from, you know, about 50 different gardens, but we make everybody sign pesticide agreements, or on the polite side, we actually integrate emergent cannabinoids based on the 2018 Farm Act. So all of those products that we get come with heavy metal testing, you know, microbials, pesticides, and we adhere to a really strict standard over there. So the way I look at these products is they're all ingredients. And we're mixing those ingredients. So we just try to, and in fact, what we've found is that's the best way to scale a company and be consistent, but also maintain high quality. Is if you break it down to the lowest common form versus just directly touching the plant. So how we were able to become Clean Green certified was they actually certified our practices in our lab, our solvents, our methodology, and then that gave us the stamp to be a Clean Green certified lab. And there's only one other Clean Green certified lab, which was Pearl. And so although we don't have control over the cultivation, our lab, because of how we vet out products and our process, allows us to be able to be Clean Green certified from that standpoint. And again, that is really a commitment from our side. It's not necessary, it's not necessarily valued, but that's just what we do.
Yeah, awesome. And then secondary to that, as your ingredients, I was looking at your website, which is really fun, by the way, and very interactive, and I love that. When you talk about the terpenes that you add back in, are you doing cannabis derived terpenes? Are you doing plant derived terpenes in general?
We do both.
Nice.
So I think I would love to talk about this.
Right, for hours.
Hours. But what I would say is, what I found is we have tiered the cartridge space in that fact that we have sort of an entry level, a mid shelf, a top shelf, and a super high end product. And so what we don't do is we don't oversell the value of our products because we want to promote our brand. We sell them exactly where they belong. And so, similar to what you would get with like a flavored or a well vodka, there are folks that want to have a cannabis experience but don't want to have cannabis taste. So it goes back to still sourcing ethically the right ingredients or the right terpenes that are safe, understanding that safe terpenes are not just cannabis terpenes. Right. And so we have those products, and then as you grow in our ladder, our products become higher concentrated when it comes to enriched cannabinoids and cannabis terpenes. But that also makes sense when you consider that terpenes are one of the most volatile components of a plant, and thus long term they're the most valuable. If you break them down like we've done in terms of cannabinoids like THC, CBD, CBG, it's actually the terpene that costs more than all of those.
Right.
As you increase the level of concentration of terpenes, you get something that's closer to a full plant, or like the actual plant, like David was saying. That is why products cost more. And so we offer a variety of them. We're just really open to the value of all of them, and we don't misarticulate what we're doing, right? So we're not making flavored vapes and saying they're from cannabis strains. That's not realistic. So this is kind of applying common sense, but we see value in all of those components.
I love that. Thank you for explaining that too. I love the diversity.
Jeff, I should have mentioned earlier, we would have had you on Sesh earlier, but something happened in your life. And tell us what happened. What happened around, was that around early January?
November.
No.
I had a baby. I had another baby, man. I'm like totally a family man. I had a COVID baby. I'm totally like about the girl dad life now. My daughters are dope as hell, and I hope the world is ready for them because they're way cooler than me. I'm kind of a stiff. I'm a little bit like going forward, going this way. My kids are way cool. And so, we're a multicultural family. That is something that I align with. My lady's Vietnamese, and so my kids are mixed as well. We're teaching our kids, they're bilingual as much as they can be. I have a 3-year-old and then a 6-year-old. And so, I walk around, I tell my daughter she's the future president. There's no limitations. It's all about, moving forward. And Trey, thank you for acknowledging that, because I was surprised she didn't run in here. My oldest, her name is, just quick story. We were going through names and she wanted to get a name blessed. And we decided to have her middle name be, my wife's, and that's Grace. And so when we went through a bunch of names, we landed on Olivia Grace Freeman. And I was a big advocate of that because now my daughter's initials are OG.
So talk to us about being a dad. As they get older, I don't know, just a few years older, have y'all talked about how you're going to address cannabis and teaching them about the plant?
It's interesting that you bring that up. So, my lady's parents were unaware of what I did for a really long time, being traditional in the fact that they're Vietnamese from Vietnam. And that was, drugs are bad, that whole thing. And so we kept that from them. We've recently exposed them to that just because they feel confident in showing what we've done, because people don't always see your vision. They see what you're doing, and you have to be able to present something that feels really solid, not just where you're going. And so when it comes to my daughters, I'm going to try to line one of these kids up to be the Steve Jobs of the cannabis industry. I hope people are ready, because I'm still very, very young when it comes to this for what I'm doing. And I'm going to totally embrace it with them. But I think, I hope that, particularly with the Polite brand, we're going to expose them to emergent cannabinoids. And so I'm really kind of negotiating with my old lady on like even using CBD topicals on my kids, and like CBG topicals, at least things that are not going to have any psychoactive effects whatsoever, and just integrating that into our lives, our daily routine, both from a really young age, but also, as they grow, so that they're not scared of the plant. And in fact, for us, cannabis is a little bit of redemption. it's kind of like, okay, well, you know, took my dad. So we're going to take this plant and we're going to change the narrative on our entire family using this plant.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. And I'm going to circle back with you on this, but the Alliance right now is talking about a possible, this came out of happy hour, a possible book drive for local libraries so that kids get positive exposure about the cannabis plants. So we're going to look to curating some books. We've got a good friend that's an influential librarian in the community, and he has already committed to reviewing books that we might suggest to him. And then we're going to see if the community might want to buy some books, and let's get them in the libraries, not to indoctrinate, but to have something that goes next to the Reefer Madness stuff that is still going to be up there, because it was 80 years of publishing as well. So keep your ears out for that. And if, just as importantly, if you all know of a good book that's for kids that would be intro, let me know. And we want to make you part of that conversation too. Jeff, thanks so much, man. Thanks for your commitment to education, your family, to our safety, and for getting that the new brand medically endorsed, because as we've said, there's a real lack of available products in the space. And as a patient, and you know, we have other patients on the call. Thanks for broadening what we can purchase.
Absolutely, guys. I can't say enough how honored I am to be here and speak with you. And you know, I'm new to this speaking component. I'm kind of locked myself in the office, pinky in the brain, trying to take over the world with data, making all these like decisions based on like that kind of component. So this is a new experience for me. But you know, I think I know that it's folks just like you who are going to kind of lead the way, continuing. And just remember, this is a marathon. That's the most important thing, is it's a marathon. And if we want this marathon to continue, and if you want to be involved, you have got to do the right thing. Full stop. If you're not doing the right thing, you have a very short window of making some money and you're out of here. Because you best believe they're going to try to kick your ass out of here. So you've got to do the right thing. And, you know, also it just gives you the ability to stand, you know, with a strong backbone and say, hey, I'm doing something ethically, and, you know, I'm reclaiming this opportunity for myself.
And it's hard work, y'all. Don't think that just because Jeff's established and has a couple brands, he doesn't have bad days. We all do. It's a weird business, and the sand is shifting all the time. So just remember, when you're having one of those cruddy days, everybody's having them, and you got CannaFam behind you. Thank you for being part of our cannabis family and for being here for Saturday Sesh. We will look forward to seeing you the first Saturday of next month. Latara, thanks for joining us. I'm sorry I left you hanging, waiting in a waiting room earlier, but it's nice to have you here as well today. We're glad to have you all. Thanks so much. Thanks for being part of our cannabis family. You'll have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time.